What we're talking about here are transmission broadcasters who are putting out television channels. So you take your main commercial TV channels in England. Let's look at a challenge they've got, which is fast turnaround video on demand. So forget everything I've told you already so far. This is a totally different topic. The active logging infrastructure is designed for broadcasters who need to get content onto video on demand faster, and in particular live content. So we'll very quickly talk about video on demand. Okay, you know all of this. So what we're seeing is that by 2015 there'll be, I think, 15% of all media, television media, will be consumed on demand. So whilst broadcast still remains quite important, you can see that 15% of all of the television watched is a significant chunk, and that will all be coming from video on demand. Now, you'll probably have noticed that things like the BBC iPlayer and all the other types of infrastructures are really starting to work and deliver a great experience for the user. But they do have some challenges, and one of the biggest ones you'll probably notice with the BBC iPlayer is something like, I don't know, The Voice on Saturday night. You come in near the end, oh damn, I've missed it. Oh, I'll watch it on the iPlayer. You get the iPlayer up, you're already into the next program. Oh, not ready yet. Oh well, I'll give it 5 minutes. Oh, still not ready yet. And an hour later you're thinking, why the bloody hell can't the BBC get this bloody show on the iPlayer straight after it ends? What's wrong with them? Well, ironically, the BBC's got less problem than commercial broadcasters, which I'll tell you about now. But the fact is that they need this technology, and I believe they're looking at it. So active logging is going to allow us to do that, solve that problem. The reason they have a problem of getting stuff immediately available is that if it's an old program that's like, let's say it's a movie or some ancient episode of Last of the Summer Wine, the chances are they've already got it converted into their format they need, and it's already in the video on demand system, and frankly they could probably have it on iPlayer whilst it was still playing out. So there's no excuse for those types of things. The things where they have problems are live television, where you've got a show that's unfolding as it happens. And as on The Voice, I think somebody perhaps uttered a rude word. They can't actually just record it off air and put it straight on iPlayer. It has to be redacted usually. And the redaction process is removing anything that's not appropriate for putting on the iPlayer. You might have got away with it broadcast, but if you put it back on catch up and you don't take it out, you're going to be in trouble. And that includes a lot of things like telephone numbers for competitions that have already closed. There's all kinds of Ofcom issues with that. So there's a certain amount of redaction that needs to be done to cover up bits like telephone numbers, to remove bits you don't want, to physically take a complete competition out if that competition's closed, just snip the whole lot out. Second screen becoming very important as well. Having a little iPad there. A lot of that's based on metadata. So what we're going to talk about is getting the video on demand stuff and also enriching it with metadata. We're trying to maximise the value of live shows. And so let me explain to you why it's so important. I know you want to see it straight after the show ends, but let's talk about why the broadcasters want you to see it straight after the show ends. Something like X Factor makes most of the money for ITV. It's a huge advertising window for them. Now, when X Factor ends, imagine you could get straight on video on demand. What they're going to do is they're going to take the commercials out and put new commercials in. So they're going to use their #1 rated show and actually put alternative commercials in. Okay? The problem is, if you haven't got it on video on demand when the show ends, there's this dead window when there is no X Factor. This is straight after the live show. Everybody's all G'd up. You just came in at the end. You want to watch it. You're ready to be advertised to. It's not there. What are you going to do? Oh, you might go to YouTube. You might go to some unofficial source to get some information about this. And meanwhile, the station is losing out. They're losing your money. What they want to do is they want to get you right there. They want to start selling to you immediately. So commercially, it's very, very important that broadcasters can get their video on demand ready straight afterwards. As I say, we need to cover up the phone numbers. We also need to deliver multiple formats because it may be going to different set-top boxes from all the different vendors and on the web and on the iPad and so on and so forth. And we'd like to gather rich metadata so we can drive those second screen experiences that are going to be running alongside the video on demand. It used to be impossible. It's not anymore. I'll tell you why it used to be impossible. Because we want to have an edited, encoded show, and maybe even uploaded show, finished around the same time the show finishes. Now, the traditional way of doing that would be, everybody knows we can edit during capture. So we can be recording during the show, and yes, we can be editing during the show. But typically that editing process will need to end at the end of the show. Then you start exporting the media, then you start transcoding it. And for a 2-hour show, it might take 45 minutes or more to transcode it. So you end up that by the time you've done all of that, you've had a 1-hour delay before your stuff's actually ready to go live on video on demand. And that's what we're trying to eliminate. So how on earth do we manage to ingest, edit, and transcode all at the same time? That's what active logging does. And the way it does it is we ingest and we send it to active logging. This is essentially a user using a jog shuttle wheel to go through and effectively mark the redaction points. So when a commercial starts, say we want to lose that there, all the way through to here. And then we get to a telephone number, right, we want to turn a graphic on here, and we're going to turn it off here. And what it's doing is it's creating an active EDL, if you like, an active log list. Meanwhile, we've got a dynamic playback channel. So the same media that's ingesting is being logged. That media's gone straight to our playback channel. It's in pause for the first few minutes of the show. We call it dynamic playback because it's not just going to play back what's being recorded. It's actually going to play back observing the information coming from the logging. So if the guy in logging says, I want to lose that commercial, when the playback gets to that commercial, it just leaps straight over it. Okay? It literally just fast forwards straight over the commercial in one frame. That's how we're doing our subtraction redaction. Also, if we're saying cover up this telephone number, the dynamic playback channel has also got a downstream keyer that's going to superimpose some graphics to cover up those telephone numbers. And all of this happens in real time. So we start ingesting, we start logging. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes after we start ingesting, we can start the playback. And we can do that because during the show, we're going to lose all the time for the commercials. So actually for a 1-hour show, you might be losing 15 minutes of material. So we can actually start the playback 15 minutes after the ingest starts, and it will still end at the end of the show because every commercial has been removed. And whilst we're doing our real-time playback with our redacted material and our covered-up graphics, we're doing a real-time encoding using a hardware encoder like Digital Rapids or Telestream Pipeline. That's actually creating our stream in real time. So ingest, active logging, playback and encoding is all happening at the same time. And it means at the end of the show, we've actually got a finished thing. So I'll just show you a comparison with the old model. So here's the old model and the new model. Okay, so here's our ingest. This is our recording of the live show. Okay. With the old model, what we'd do is we would load it into an editor, and we'd have to physically remove the adverts and physically insert graphics. So if we're using Final Cut Pro or something like that, we'd actually be dragging graphics on and making edits and stuff like that all in real time. It's a bit fiddly. Okay, in actual fact, we've discovered that editing with a nonlinear editor for redaction is actually not the most efficient way of doing it. Using a jog shuttle wheel and hotkeys is much quicker and much easier than using a nonlinear editor. The other problem is when the show ends and you finish your last edits, you've then got to do your export, which may be quick, it may be slow, but it's time. Only then can you start your transcode. Okay? If you do multiple encodings for a long show, it will always take a long time. There's no such thing as an instant encode. The other thing we've got to do is we need to create what they call an XML manifest. So the video on demand system expects to know where these bits were chopped out because it's going to put new adverts in at the same place. So somebody's also got to build an XML manifest to feed with the encoder straight to the video on demand system. So the new mechanism using active logging, what we do, it's more or less the same idea. We are still trying to remove the commercials, still trying to cover up the CGs. But what we actually do is by actively logging that. So this is the playout. The playout's going to get here, it's going to turn the CG on using the downstream keyer. So it's real-time compositing. It's then going to get there and literally leap over the advert. And as you can see, it's going to end roughly at the same end. But whilst it's doing that, it's doing the encoding at the same time. So what you can see is the encoding is going to end here instead of here. And it also creates the XML manifest automatically because it knows everything that's going on. And lo and behold, we have the SIENNA Active Logging commercial advantage. This is your big money. This is your window of opportunity which you've lost by not having it ready. And that's where you're going to make all your extra revenue, with new adverts in that hot window straight after the show ends when the consumers actually want to watch it. And you're not going to piss them off by saying, well, come back in 2 hours. The hardware we use is similar to the hardware I talked about for the Olympics. So we've got the Core i7 servers, the AGI OXTs. We use a jog shuttle and the iPad with the logging thing that I talked about. And you know that window I was talking about there. You don't need to see that. So the end product is commercial has been removed, the phone numbers are covered up. We've also done a lot of rich logging. So we haven't just been logging with that jog shuttle the bits we redact. We're also going to say, this is the bit where so-and-so comes on in a great, really nice dress. That log line can be going to your commercial systems for your second screen. So when somebody plays that back and somebody comes on with a beautiful dress, up in the corner, like this dress, buy it. Okay, so you can do all those kind of commercial linkages, and that's where we start adding value to media. There's nothing less valuable than a completely unlogged vanilla piece of media. You can play it back fine, but you can't find it, and you can't use it for second screen experiences. You can't use it for targeted marketing. So logging every asset is really critically important to the future of broadcasters' use of media. And of course, everything's integrated with the MAM, as you might imagine. Metadata is money. That's what I was saying, really. Vanilla files with no metadata is worth nothing. If you add the metadata, including your commercial insertion points, but more particularly for future, adding in your hit points where your adverts are going to come up and where your product placements come up and things like that. Really, really important for multi-platform delivery and second screen. It's applicable for live TV shows. You can also use it for your entire station output. As I said, we've discovered that using the jog shuttle and the iPad is actually much, much easier than using a nonlinear editor. So this is the way to do your video on demand prep, whether you need it live or not.